Rich?
All right. As far as the livestock here, starting with cattle, I'm actually going to use that last chart that we ended with the wheat one, where we talked about the wheat, the lack of snow cover in the plains. Just want to point out as far as, let's look over on the East Coast here and see what kind of effect that we may have on U.S. beef demand. But our key demand area in the U.S., the northeastern areas are covered up in snow. 29 inches or so is what the talk is right now. So if that's going on, these people cannot get out to the restaurants, cannot go buy that expensive steak at the restaurants. So with that in mind, we can now argue maybe a little negative factor here as far as this goes for the storm for a short-term effect. For the big picture, we still are so keyed up on this U.S. consumer demand issue that we still got to bring this up over and over. U.S. consumer spending, here's actually through October, in terms of numbers at this point, you're running about a 2 or 3% increase year over year. So consumers are back in the game. Also want to point out numbers, I believe, through Wednesday as far as holiday sales. I believe those are up about 5% or so, depending on which group you're going to look at. Since we did have that storm, they're saying that maybe numbers might dip a little bit here since that Wednesday period, and maybe end the month only up maybe 3 to 4%. The bottom line is consumers are back in the game. We're still very excited about that one here. As we said before, our 110 target has been hit, filled, and all that, and that's old news now apparently on the April contract. At this point, I don't want to dial up our U.S. consumer demand estimate up anymore. I think we're going to stay with our 110 estimate right now for that April contract and basically say, yes, our upside objective was hit much earlier than expected, but for right now, we just don't want to start reaching up and just throwing numbers up right now. So we're still going to say this is still a bull market. We wouldn't worry about any sales right now unless we actually start breaking for some reason below that 110 region. Maybe work on some 110 sell stops based at the April contract or so. So cattle is still a bull market in our opinion right now. For the hog side, I want to point out two things here as far as number one regarding this hogs and pigs report we have this afternoon. As you note here with the trend of liquidation, well, liquidation is ending. We're actually going to slow a slight change here from the September report to the current one. Average guess is about a 1% drop in the breeding herd. And one thing to keep in mind with this hog market here, with the general hog production issue here, a 1% change in the breeding herd actually still means expansion. And why do we say that? Productivity per year continues to increase. So in other words, if you have 100 sows in a barn, they're going to produce about 2 to 2.5% more pork than the previous year, based on continued production efficiencies. You may note this little dip here on this chart here for 2010. It looks a little smaller, but at this point, we're just going to argue that's probably more of a corn quality issue these guys had to deal with rather than a change. So if we have the breeding herd down 1%, but efficiency continues to show about a 2% increase, it actually means pork production up 1% or so. So anything less than a 2% drop in the breeding herd actually means expansion in the hog side. So what I want to point out here with this chart is the fact is we're still we're going to kind of balance numbers out a little bit here. We're done with liquidation. We're going to show a slight expansion into next year. As far as the slaughter issue here, I want to point out the storms over this today hitting the East Coast. It is going to impact some plants. 41,000 head is the deficiency right now in today's bill. 41,000.